Hey, it's Chelsea, founder of Mama's Modern Village, and I am so glad you are here. I'm a motherhood therapist, matrescence coach, village builder, and most importantly, a mama myself. My mission with this series is twofold. One, to bring you crucial conversations with changemakers and thought leaders, experts in the world of motherhood and beyond, that only strengthen your own inner knowing and intuition. And secondly, to have casual conversations like a coffee date with women and mamas just like yourself that are raw, real, and relatable. We all need a good mama friend. Heck, we all need a friend these days, and we're here to be yours. Disclaimer, this conversation is not intended to replace any clinical advice and is intended for educational purposes only. Without further ado, here's today's conversation. I am so excited to have Kristy here with me today on our show. We are so glad that you are here to join us and share more about who you are and the incredible mission that you are on as a woman, an entrepreneur, and all the other multiple identities you have. So thank you so much, Kristy, for joining us.
Oh, you're so sweet, Chelsea. Thank you for having me. I feel like this feels like a reunion of sorts because you did my show. You did my show on season 1, and that's how we connected. And you and I were chit-chatting before we hit record a little bit. And I think it's very true, but we're kindred spirits. We have similar but different missions. I think similar missions that are coming to fruition in different ways, or that are embodied in different ways. And I'm really excited to get to be your guest. So we'll see how that goes, Chelsea.
I know we've flipped roles here a little bit. We were trying to think about the time, and I think it was probably like 2.5. What was it? 2.5 years ago or so.
Yes. It's been 2.5 years. That's so crazy. So Chelsea and I connected somewhere around when I did Labor of Love. And for those of you that don't know, this was a show that ran 1 season, and it was really designed to empower women in their early 40s, really having to kind of make this decision of having a baby, potentially having a baby on their own, or missing that window. And I had really been, maybe in a lot of ways a typical career woman. And I had sort of sacrificed that personal part of my life, assuming that it would just fall into place. And I found myself in my early 40s and single and literally up against the clock. And so, Chelsea, we had connected because I love this idea of what you were doing to really support mothers in that journey, which I think is so similar to what I'm doing, trying to support women in that journey. I think it all really comes down to remembering to take care of yourself and advocating for women on all different levels. And I think really helping women understand that they have options and choices that I don't think are put in front of us the way society and culture is today. So I feel like you and I are adding to that pot, and I just wanted to keep growing till it like bubbles over and all these little tangents and options become more normal and obvious for women to choose from, right? So I really wanted to share your work because I think it's hugely important. I know at that time I was really engrossed in the single mothers by choice community because those of you that don't know, I didn't work out with anyone on the show. And that was really my line in the sand to start pursuing motherhood on my own. And I think this happens to all women, but I think especially the single mothers by choice, because you do have to go through IVF, and it's an artificial process of getting pregnant. And it's a very grueling one. You're very focused on that without really thinking about what it's going to be like when you are a mom, and it's so crazy when you say it out loud, because it's like, how do we not think about it? But we don't. And then on top of which, you're doing that alone. And most single mother by choice are having babies later in life. So they've spent the bulk of their life with a different identity. And I think shifting that, there's so many wonderful things, but no one talks about how difficult that could be. So, so appreciate that work that you're doing. And I think it's a lot of what I'm trying to share as well, just in how life often works out differently than we think. And that's not always a bad thing. But I will say it has taken me, I'm on the brink of turning 45, and I feel like I'm kind of just getting there now. And I've done a lot of work. So I don't ever want to make it sound like it's easy. Oh, I just did this. I didn't. I've had a lot of hard knocks in life. It's kind of, I feel like I've sort of clawed my way into this position of really being able to embrace who I am and what I want my life to be. And the one thing I will say that I do feel really proud of myself about, I think, is for whatever reason, I have always been willing to take the leap. like I've always been willing to take the chance on the out of the box thing. And I don't think I really realized until recently that is more rare. And I think it is what has really shaped me and allowed me to sort of get all of that different experience and figure out like who I really am. Because you and I have talked a lot about, you know, perfectionism in women, so common, people pleasing. I had all that stuff too. I had traditional upbringing and I had this alternative stuff. You know, I went to Notre Dame and then I also went to acupuncture school. You know, it's like I had this push pull going on all the time. Is, you know, I'm traditional, but I'm also different. And I would say that's actually very true to who I am, but I couldn't find my place with that, right? Like, who is that person? I'm not this person. I'm not that person.
Where do I fit?
I never felt like I fit anywhere. Like, I'm only now starting to feel seen. And that's kind of crazy to me, but I think a lot of people feel that way too. Like, I don't think most of us fit in a box, right?
Oh my gosh, that so deeply resonates with me. I think that's like societally, right? Like we grow up being groomed, horrible word. Shaped
it's
to
true,
be like,
though. I feel like if that was a Freudian slip, but it's the truth. I feel like girls are groomed to be good girls from the start.
Right. And then like all the messaging we hear about that and like how we're supposed to look and how we're supposed to act and like even the career options, maybe I'm speaking to like more of our generation. But the career options that were given to us, be a teacher and do all these things, right? It's so limiting. And then when we kind of bump up against ourselves being like, well, that doesn't fit, or that doesn't actually resonate with me. We feel like there's like something wrong with us versus being able to put the blame or that expectation onto who it really belongs to.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
So unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah. So I feel that, definitely resonates for like women in general. And then mothers too, they deeply, deeply think, you know, the good girl grows into the perfect woman that grows into the perfect mother. And the perfectionism and the people pleasing around how we raise our children, you know, how we enjoy mothering, enjoy our journey of conceiving, pregnancy, etc. Yeah, we're told how this experience should be. So can you tell me a little bit more about like how you have come to feel seen now that you're almost 45? Like, what has this journey looked like?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I really think it's like a lot of hard knocks and closed doors. And I don't even mean that to sound negative, because I do really feel like that is the journey. It's really experiencing life that shapes us, right? And, you know, so for me, I grew up a lot of like we're talking about, you know, I grew up in an upper middle class family in the Midwest. I was definitely raised to be the good girl. I was super quiet and shy in school. I was a straight A student. You know, people cringe when they say this. I think it's in my trailer to my season 2, but I like had a plan for my whole life in kindergarten. And I thought any deviation from that was a failure. And that is just literal lunacy when I say it right now, but that is what made sense to me. So, you know, lo and behold, I think you if you're lucky enough to sort of get through college and hold to that plan somewhat, it's a rude awakening when you get out in the real world and you start, you know, having some hard knocks. So for me, you know, I did well in school. I went to the University of Notre Dame and graduated with honors. You know, I kind of just felt like a little lost after I was out, because there had always sort of been that next step planned out for you when you're pursuing maybe a traditional education path. And I wasn't so sure, you know, what I wanted to do. And I think this is the first time, like a year after I got out of undergrad, that I sort of started to walk my own path. So let me remind y'all, I was like 22 and I'm 45 now. So we're talking about a 20-year journey to really settle into more authenticity with myself. But that was when I made the decision to go to school to study Chinese medicine and acupuncture. You know, I went straight out of, you know, a year out of Notre Dame to something at the time in the Midwest that was completely unheard of. But I was really into holistic health and I wanted to find a way to practice that in Illinois. And, you know, that's kind of what I landed on. So that was like my first sort of taste of honoring myself and going against the grain. All my friends were going to law school. They were becoming consultants. And I always tell this story because it was so telling to me. And this even ties into some of the reality TV work I'm working on now, which we can get into. But I remember 2 years into my program, because it's a 4-year grad program, Gwyneth Paltrow got photographed with cupping marks on her back. So cupping is something they do in Chinese medicine. It leaves what looks like bruises. It's not. And people went wild, right? Well, suddenly everyone wanted to get cupping, and it was the cool thing. And I remember suddenly I was the friend that everyone wanted to invite to parties. Oh, my friend Kristy, she's acupuncture school. I thought that was so wild. I went from almost being the pariah to the cool friend overnight. And it was just because Gwyneth had it done, and that just really
made it popular.
Struck me. It did, and it was really crazy to me. That really stuck with me, how much influence there is in Hollywood, in our culture, for better or worse. But anyway, so that was kind of like my first experience. And then I would say, shortly after I got out of grad school, I had a total health collapse, which truthfully I still deal with a lot of repercussions from. And I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia at that time, when no one was talking about that. It wasn't a thing. Like, if you Googled that, there was nothing there. I happened to be working for the director of integrative medicine at Evanston Hospital at the time, and she sort of put that bug in my ear. Hey, I think you're dealing with this. The unfortunate thing is, even now, if you're dealing with that, no one really knows what to do with it, but I can tell you, I have spent, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in time in every medical office you can imagine, trying to get answers and just rebuild my health. Right. And so I remember most of my 20s, I was very, very sick. I managed to get through grad school and pass my board exams and get my acupuncture license. And I practiced for a little bit, but it was very, very difficult for me because it's a big energy drain, of which I didn't have. You know it because you're a practitioner. It's wonderful, but you have to really learn to protect your energy. It is. Yes. Yeah. And so that was another moment of reckoning for me, I will say, because what I had felt like is I had sacrificed so much of my youth, so much just youthful spirit and play and having fun to do the right thing so that I could be successful right out of school. I felt like I crashed and burned right out of the gate. I literally spent a weekend where I couldn't get out of bed, and I finally crawled to my phone to call my mom, because we didn't have cell phones in those days, to say, like, I don't know what's happening to me. And, I didn't know this is something that I'd still be dealing with 20 years later. Obviously, I'm better than I was at that time, but I struggle quite a bit with my health. And it's just something that I don't talk about very much, because I always felt like I couldn't, or opportunities would be taken from me. But
almost seen as like a weakness.
That's right. Yeah. Or like, we don't take on that liability. And this has even played into the decision to pursue motherhood, particularly as a single mom or not, because I have such an ebb and flow with my health. And this last year, after being on, IVF and going through fertility treatments, which, for those of you that don't know, I mean, in addition to all the drugs, some of which are chemotherapy drugs, it's hormones and things that just really, really just wreck your body. Yeah. And I feel like I have spent this whole last year kind of recovering from what 2 years of being on fertility drugs did to me physically, and the process emotionally. To be honest with you, I feel like I developed a lot of, like, I hate to say it, but like PTSD of going through the experience. And I didn't know that. I no doubt. And I mean, I have a wonderful fertility team. This has nothing to do with them. They are lovely humans, amazing doctors. There's just, it can feel very degrading. Lack of privacy. It's just getting poked and prodded constantly. I find myself, when I would think about doing it again, I literally felt traumatized. And I didn't realize that till I had been out of the process for almost a year, that it had impacted me that way. And that just like blew my mind.
Oh, that alone is going to resonate with so many people. Cause I think that, like, we're supposed to be happy, like, that we have this opportunity, and we're supposed to, like, be hopeful, right? All these, again, supposed tos. Yeah. The reality is like, that journey is a constant tightrope of, like, navigating hope and grief at the same time. And, like, the amount of cortisol and adrenaline that's you have to maintain to continue that journey.
Yes.
Talk about chronic stress. Like, yes. Yeah. Just another avenue for that.
And I think a lot of women do this. We don't, especially because we're saying, like, the context of this, you want a baby. I was so grateful to have the support from the show and from my medical team. We don't give ourselves permission, I think, to say it's hard, let alone feel it's hard, which makes it that much worse. because it is hard. It's physically hard and mentally hard. And you can feel that and still be grateful, right? But I think it's hard for us to hold both, at least for me. That's something I've been working on.
No, definitely. It sounds like there's an aspect of you that was like denying the reality of the situation in order to like save face.
Yes. And I would say even to survive, right? And I feel like I've done this with certain traumatic events in my life. And I hear this from other women. You don't want to acknowledge it. Even I think this is part of me with dealing with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. I never wanted to be a part of the support groups or maybe vocalize it out loud because then it's real, which is ridiculous because it's real no matter what.
Right.
But if you start talking about it, it's like then you're claiming it, then it's real. Like if you tell people, I don't know, it feels more real. And I have a friend dealing with some health issues, and she recently said the same thing to me. She said, I think I haven't done this, or I haven't gone to support groups because I don't want to be that. I don't want it to be real. I said, listen, I totally get that. And that's a real thing because I feel the same way, which is, it's wild. But I think that's part of this perfectionism we're talking about. I know for me, I thought, well, no one's going to like me, or I'm not going to be successful, or no one's going to hire me, or no one's going to want to date me. No one's going to want to marry me. They're going to be afraid I can't have children, or, all these things that I cooked up that I thought, no, this is definitely a big knock against the image of perfection that I felt like I had to portray, that I just kept it under wraps, even in the worst years where I was really bedridden. And then it's worse, especially at that time, like I was denied any sort of disability. I mean, thankfully I had parents who were willing to help me out, but no one understood it. And it's very difficult because things don't really show up in blood work and things that our medical system deems legitimate to support your disability. And people have told me now, like, well, now that it's more well known, why don't you try? And I said, ironically, I don't have the energy to try. And it's not where I want to be spending my time. So I've figured out ways to kind of ride that wave and and I'm kind of in the middle of it too, and really kind of carving out a life that works for me, where I can have more enjoyment in my daily life. But it took me kind of reckoning with that as well. And this kind of brings me to when I turned 30, I had finished grad school. I practiced acupuncture for a couple of years. I'd been working at a health food store, and I was meeting sales reps, and they were doing trainings, and I thought those looked fun, but they weren't really great at them. And I ended up getting hired by like the #1 company in the supplement industry at the time to be an educator. And a few months in, they asked me to take Chicago, which was a huge territory. It was like it was like probably second highest grossing after California, right? So it was a big territory for the company, and they asked me to become like the account executive for the territory. And I thought, well, not only is this kind of feels like my first legit job since I've been sick, but I'm not a salesperson, and that's how the story goes, right? And they say the famous last words kind of thing. It was like 12 years I was in sales, working for the best companies in my industry. It did pull in that holistic piece that I'm really passionate about. And that's the only reason I probably did well. And I feel really, really grateful for that time that I spent, but I absolutely burnt myself out. I feel like, especially those first years, it was a total grind. I was working probably 90 hours a week. I felt like I was trying to make up for that lost time, right? I wanted to be successful. And at the time, success to me meant being the top of the company, making good money. Yeah. And I did that. But again, especially because I was dealing with the health issues, it was at the cost of really any solidness in my personal life. I was going out on dates, but truthfully, I didn't have the time or energy outside of what I was doing at work to invest in anything to turn it into a relationship. And, so no wonder I ended up in my late 30s single and going, now I really am up against the clock. Everyone keeps telling you, oh, it'll happen. And I remember I kept saying, like, I'm 36 or I'm 38. Like, I don't have time. But I think sometimes when you look younger, or I don't know, or people think you have, I don't want to say a perfect life, but it seems like you have things going well for yourself. That's what people say to you. And the reality is you don't have time. I remember even saying that to my doctor. I was like, but I don't have time, Yep. And everyone starts like, oh, it'll just work out. And I do think we do that with our personal lives a lot. We really invest in steps to create a successful professional life, at least in the way I grew up. no one teaches you how to have a successful personal life. No one tells you that that's okay to prioritize. And everyone kind of tells you it will just happen when you're not looking, right?
Yep. It'll be magical, fairy tale. Yeah, it'll exactly. And we're such a society of like, again, back to this like perfectionism, but of outcome and measurements, right? And for a woman too, to like get pulled into sales, that's a big role for a woman. And so that added level of pressure to be successful and to compete and to like prove your worth, I'm sure was definitely an element too.
It was. And I went like 0 to 60. I was at the top of my company the first year. Everyone was like chasing me, but I'm not a competitive person. I'm not a typical salesperson that way. I'm competitive with myself perhaps, but I'm someone who's going to tell you what I'm doing, share everything. But in most sales environments, other people are not like that. And it's a really kill or be killed culture. It's a work hard, party hard. That certainly wasn't great for my health. I'm very grateful for that time in my life. And it certainly afforded me income to sort of catch up on what I felt like I lost. It afforded me the ability to start traveling by myself. I mean, those are some of my best experiences in my life. I would do it all over again just for that. But again, it's like everything has its sort of dark side, right? I really didn't have much depth in my personal life. And, the irony is, and we can chat about this a little bit, but I feel like I'm kind of taking you guys through the somewhat nonlinear journey that is my life that got me here. But, I ended up getting married, and this was sort of talked about in Labor of Love, but I remember going into it, I thought I wouldn't do the show if they made me talk about it. It was too close to my divorce. And I had married someone who's like a true narcissist, sociopath, sort of disguised as a nerdy upper elementary school teacher. And I was so terrified at the time of doing the show that I was like, if you make me talk about him, I'm out. And that was tough, but there was no way I was going to subject myself to going through that wrath again. And anyone who's dealt with someone who has a personality disorder and has a network that is behind them, it's brutal. I didn't know this existed until I found myself in it. I don't even know for a while I was in it if I knew. Looking back, I don't know how I got through it. I truly, truly don't. And I feel lucky that I escaped as well as I did. But for me, I got married and divorced in the same year when I was 38. And that was devastating on a lot of levels. Not only was I dealing with this really insane thing that I did not know exist, and the last person I thought, even if I had known, that would fit that persona would be a teacher who seemed kind of nerdy, and that's kind of what they do. People should know, because I was at this point where I was really looking for someone who wanted to be married, wanted to start a family. That's what I wanted. That was a missing piece of my puzzle. And I had been, dating the business guys, the city guys, and everyone sort of thought, well, that's why it didn't work out. You got it wrong. Now this is the kind of guy who will give you that. Well, no, that's not actually who he was at all, but that's what they do. They get that information from you, and they groom you, like the word we started with. They start feeding those things back to you and showing you those things until it's too late. He pushed the relationship along. We got married quickly. And some things happened that I started to see the truth, and things blew up really quickly. And I filed for divorce 6 months after I was married. I mean, Chelsea, to talk about having to pick yourself up off the floor. I was still getting congratulated about being married at my accounts, and I was going through this, and he was ruthless. I mean, I lost everything in that marriage, everything that I had saved. And keep in mind that I spent my 20s being sick and basically broke. And I was stashing money for this like future I wanted, and it was like gone. Everything was gone. And I just thought, how could this happen? Like, this is so unfair. I don't understand how someone could just come in and take all this, and there's like nothing I could do. It was like, either I'm going to spend that in legal bills, getting it back, or walk. Right. And that was where I would say like my life ended. And I mean that that was the shattering of life as I knew it. Nothing made sense to me anymore. It's like, that was the point. So I was 38 that I really felt like I was sort of Bambi figuring out life again, because everything I knew that didn't make sense how that could happen. I didn't really know how to function in life moving forward.
It's crazy making. Yeah.
It's crazy making.
Yeah.
And I remember it must have been a month, Chelsea, that I would literally go to work. I'd go out. I was in sales. I was out in the field every day. I'd put on like my pencil skirt. I'd go into my accounts. I would come home and just crawl into bed with my skirt and everything, makeup and everything, get up the next day. I would just like put makeup over makeup. I did this for like, I don't know. I don't even know how I got through it. I truly, truly don't. And this is the crazy part. And I've talked about it. It's a weird thing to say it was a blessing, but 6 months after I filed for divorce, I was in the terrorist attack in Nice, France. And obviously that's horrific. And I had a lot of PTSD that I had to work through with that for many years after. And it was like compounding PTSD because I had the trauma from my ex-husband. And 6 months later, I was in a terrorist attack. I mean, literally the most terrifying thing and an unlikely thing any of us will be in. And I remember just thinking, how could this be happening? How could I have just gone through this and now I'm going to die in a terrorist attack? And I remember I was like on the beach and I had this like moment where it was like, I just literally, my head was like, oh, hell no. That's literally what I said. I was like, if you're going to kill me, come and get me, because I'm not going down without a fight. And it was like, that's the moment I feel like I got my fight back. But it's also what allowed me to put my marriage and my ex-husband in perspective. It allowed me to say that was a really bad chapter, a chapter I really wish didn't exist, but it's a chapter. It doesn't have to ruin the rest of my life. And I truly feel if I wouldn't have been faced with that literally terrifying life or death moment, I honestly, Chelsea, don't believe I would have recovered. I don't say that like lightly, but I would have been a shell of a human being for the rest of my life. I did not know how to recover from that kind of shock and betrayal of, not only dating someone, but marrying someone. I married a stranger. I did not know who that man was. He was a fake persona that I married. And that's truly terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Absolutely.
And he took everything from me, and would have taken more if there was more, So I don't know what the lesson is there. Cause I don't necessarily anymore think like you always have to make lemonade out of lemons or things like that. But it's just continue with my journey that all these things, obviously, as they were happening, were awful. And my life was so hard. But it's like the further you get along, I do think you can look back on your journey and see how things have shaped who you are, have guided you in certain directions. Unfortunately, I'm very stubborn and resilient. Sometimes I think it takes these big things to really redirect me because I will just keep pushing and going and going. But for me, that was like a real reality check. And I would say that like summer of 2016, when that attack happened, that was the start of my life now. That was like the start of me really asking myself what I want and working to build those things. And, it's interesting because if you think about it, then it was like the casting for Labor of Love started less than 2 years after that. That was like a long process. It's just like I was starting to do a lot of things differently and off the grid at that point, because I truly had that moment of life or death. And it is true what they say. And I can tell you this, I will share with people. It's a cliche, but it is true. Keep in mind, at that point, I was at the pinnacle of my career. I was the most successful I'd ever been, the most exhausted I had ever been. But I remember when I thought I wasn't going to make it off the beach, literally the only thing I was thinking about was like friends, family. Why hadn't I spent more time wanting to be a mom, wanting to fall in love, all that? That's literally all I cared about. And I remember that stuck with me, that I was like, oh my gosh, I mean, that's so cliche, but it's so true. And I remember sort of like bargaining with God, universe, whatever you want to say. I was like, if you let me make it off this beach, I promise. I mean, it gives me chills saying it. I was like, I promise I'll do things differently. And that makes me cry. Like, just saying it out, I feel like that's what I've tried to do every day since then. And it hasn't been smooth and it hasn't been easy, but I've truly tried to dig deep into who I am and make choices every day that are more aligned with who I am and just enjoy daily life more. I used to only live for the big things and get through the day for the big moments. And I care much more about what my daily life. Yes. But that was like kind of the start of the Kristy 2.0, we'll call it.
There's so many like threads in there that I want to pick apart, but it's almost as if like I don't know how are you comfortable referring to your ex-husband? Can I just say ex-husband? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Like he stood as like that representation of like, you check all the boxes, you did it, you made it in your career, you married the boy next door, like you did all the right things. And then it comes like crashing down on you because it was you living up to these expectations that were not your own.
Yes.
And then like, of course you went through, I mean, a very traumatic relationship, and then to go through and survive another huge life trauma like that. Like there's the concept within the realm and the field of trauma of, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but post-traumatic growth, which is like the opposite. Like after you've come out and made meaning and purpose of like significant traumatic events in your life, there is this newfound sense of like meaning and purpose in your life. And that's what you're claiming. That's like what you really like. And I love that you often talk about I'm going to pronounce the word wrong. Reclamation. Am I saying it wrong?
Yes. No, you're saying it right.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's you. That's like where you are in this 2.0.
It is. I mean, that makes me happy to hear you say that. Like, I do love the word reclamation because it is empowering. I think so many times I thought so many of us, I was looking outside to figure out who I am or what I'm supposed to do. And reclamation is just really about reclaiming who you were all along. But because I think the programming starts so young for us on who we should, there's that should again be, that we lose sight of that. And it really is just a reclaiming. And I say that because again, it's not easy. I always really try to say that because especially if people are following me on social media or anyone on social media, it looks like it's so easy and it's just happening, but you're not seeing all this other stuff. It's not easy. And sometimes it will be quick and sometimes it will be slow. But I think the truth is reclamation is so powerful because it gives you the authority and control. It's reminding you that you do have the answers, and it's just getting there. It's how are you going to get there, and how are you going to trust yourself that what you're feeling are your answers, or what you're feeling you should do is what you want to do, and I think we don't trust ourselves. That was like a huge problem for me. So I could see all these signs, and maybe even signs looking back with my ex-husband, but because he would tell me something different, I didn't trust myself that I was right, to feel like something was off. And I think we can say that in a lot of realms in our life. So that reclamation is really about trusting yourself again. And I think as soon as you do, those layers do start to peel back and the road gets a little easier, or at least like the opportunities that are more aligned with you start showing up. And they were probably there all along, but you just didn't notice them. Right.
Exactly.
I know I definitely had the blinders on. So
definitely. Cause you're so like, we have like those cultural norms and expectations glasses on, and they like taint every other option that comes up. Yeah.
Everything. Yeah. And I think I said this on my steward date on Labor of Love, but I remember I said, of course I would never want to go through that marriage and divorce again. It was literally god awful. I there are no words. I mean, I'm not at a loss for words often, but I don't even know how to describe what happened. It was so atrocious. But at the same time, if it hadn't blown up in such a quote unquote fantastic way, I would be living a nice life right now. And I always said, I was never the girl that wanted a nice life. Like, how did I fall into that trap? The irony. And so as much as that was terrible, it really was a lifesaver because it got me out of a nice life, which is not what I wanted for myself. And then, fast forward to Labor of Love, when that opportunity came along, I was really at that crossroads. I had just turned 40. I was looking into freezing my eggs. I was dating. Every date held so much importance because I really had to know quickly if I was interested in someone or not. And then I was also at the age though where a lot of men I was going out with were assuming that I didn't want kids. And it was terrible. And I even found myself getting into some relationships I probably shouldn't have in that time because I was so pressured to figure it out. And so when I had the opportunity to do Labor of Love, I thought, oh, this is perfect. It's a dating show. They're going to cast guys for me and that'll be it. Like either I'll match with one of these guys and we'll find out if this is something we want to do or not, or I'm going to start pursuing having a baby on my own. And so that really for me was the next era. And I think I never personally really thought of that as a crazy thing to do. Turns out a lot of America did think that was a crazy thing to do. But, I didn't, because I know a lot of women like me who are in this position and having to make these decisions. And they're amazing. They're amazing and the most thoughtful women. And it's like, why shouldn't they have options to pursue that part of their life? Right. So I'm grateful for that experience because it pushed me to really draw the line. Like, I have a lot of friends who missed their window because they did just keep waiting, hoping to meet someone in again, that it's going to happen mentality that we're kind of told when it comes to our personal life. And I guess I had that opportunity, and I was, again, willing to think outside the box and embrace an opportunity that I would have maybe never chosen on my own, but it was giving me a gift of being able to pursue motherhood with some support. And I don't know if I would have made that leap otherwise, but it supported and pushed me in that direction to explore that piece of my life that had been in limbo for so long and had, led me down some not great paths. I feel like this set me up to have the support of a great medical team, to have support of a great community. I connected with you, Chelsea, and so many wonderful women. A lot of my great friends now are women in the Single Mothers by Choice community. So I feel like it kind of propelled me into supportive space to actually look into like, what options do I have to pursue motherhood that I would not have had otherwise.
No, it sounds like it actually opened up so many doors for you and gave you a sense of like, I have autonomy. I have power and choice over what this looks like for me.
It absolutely did. And I said this from the very beginning. The main reason I said yes is because I live in Chicago. I live in a cosmopolitan city where some people are doing this, but people are pretty open-minded. I have to remember a lot of America is not like that. A lot of women are in small towns. With my family super open and supportive, a lot of people don't have that. And I thought, here's an opportunity to help normalize something that should be normalized. Like, and I think there was a lot of women that don't even know that that's an option. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal to just get that information out there and try to help normalize it so more women don't miss their chance just because they didn't meet someone in time, and I think everything's shifting, right? I mean, men are having babies later, but they can, that's fortunate for them that they can. But I think a lot of women are delaying that, and it really tightens up that window because biology has not caught up with the way that we're living socially these days, right? And that is what it is. Like, we can't really do much about that. What we can do is change what's normal and help popularize options for women to still pursue motherhood if that's something that they want to choose. I don't think you have to choose that. Of course, a lot of my life, I didn't think that's what I wanted. And later in life, I did. I assumed it would just happen. I think for me, like, I've sort of touched on the health struggles I've had, and that's not something that I shared with the producers. I was really afraid they wouldn't pick me if they knew. I mean, all my health tests are good. Everything looks good, but I was like, oh gosh, they won't pick me. And I was like, I don't want this taken away from me too. That's how I felt. I was like, I don't want this taken away from me too, because of this thing that has been this albatross around my neck for half my life. Right. And so, but those topics have come up a lot. And I share this now because, especially as a single mother, obviously it's hard. You're your own financial provider and all the care, everything. And you're going through a brutal process to get pregnant. And there's a lot of ups and downs with that, physically, emotionally. And so for me, I think maybe it looked like on the show that I didn't have those struggles, because I had a good job and I had been successful, but I did because for me, I was balancing, my health, and I'd always had to sort of choose one or the other. Like, am I going to focus on my career, or is it going to be personal? Because I didn't have the physical bandwidth to do both. And so everyone has some version of that. I guess that's the message I want to get there. So if you think other women don't, and obviously some people have it easier than others, I'm not denying that, but trust me, everyone's juggling something that makes making those big decisions difficult. It's not, I don't think it's ever as black and white as it looks from the outside, no matter who you're looking at.
Absolutely. Agreed. Definitely. I love this idea of expanding what's normal, right? And like really saying there's so many options and diversifying kind of the way that we can we can take our life, whether it is through how we become mothers, or it's the careers that we choose, or what we do with the trauma that we've experienced. Like, there is not a one size fits all. There is not one route to, you know, finding our authentic selves or whatever that might be. And I just think that, yeah, you're creating that. You're opening up so many doors for women along those roads.
I mean, I hope so. I think one truth I stand by that I've learned is your life is what you make it. And that's it. It's as much as you make it or as little as you make it. Like, no one's coming to save you. No one's coming to do it for you. Like, it sucks. Really want someone to figure it out for me. But that's also empowering. You know, it doesn't mean you can control what happens to you, but, you know, we all know you can control and learn to react to things differently or process things differently. It doesn't mean you don't have to do the work, but I think it can actually be empowering, but it can be overwhelming. That was my problem. I was overwhelmed because I didn't know. I think I didn't know because I had just followed the rule book for so long. And that was my whole thing with my podcast, She's Unscripted, tearing up the script, because I suddenly just, I had to figure it out because I had been following the script for the good girl for so long.
It's not working.
And so a lot of us was like a turtle. We'll sort of poke our head out of our shell and go, oh wait, that's too overwhelming. I don't know. I think honestly, that is the most paralyzing thing. It's not the roadblocks. It's not the difficult things that happen. It's the not knowing and not trusting yourself to know or figure it out. That's what keeps people stuck. I truly believe that.
That's no question. It's paralyzing. It's, you know, it's on one hand, I guess, you know, it's saying, let's normalize and open up all these options. But on the other hand, it's like the Netflix effect where you'll like scroll for like 2 hours because there's too many options.
100%. And like, we're such a global society now, especially with social media and everything. Oh gosh, I feel for kids now. That's difficult. Yeah.
The world is
the paradox of choice. Yes.
No doubt. Okay. So I'm aware of time and I want to be very conscientious of your time, but I hear, you know, maybe there's things or behaviors or little habits that and this is a total random question tangent, that you've incorporated into your life that allow you to kind of come back to yourself day to day or week to week. What might some of those be?
Ooh, I have a lot of them. But I would say, because again, I do think this is different for everyone, but the biggest thing I've done is really to start looking at my life as a daily thing versus big picture. And what I mean by that is I truly believe your life literally is a culmination of what your everyday looks like. I spent so much of my life only living for the achievements or the big days. And of course I didn't enjoy those things when I got them, that I was never happy. I think since I've made the shift to really understanding how I live my life every day is going to impact how I feel about my life as a whole, everything is different. So what does that look like? It means I take the time to juice my celery in the morning or make myself chai tea. I gave up coffee last week, Chelsea. I am so freaking proud of myself. It was brutal. Okay. I'm glad we changed our recording to this week because I would have been a big old mess, but I'm so proud of myself.
That's amazing.
I do feel better, but it's those rituals. I love having morning rituals. So for me, it's that. It's journaling. It's taking the dogs for a walk. I believe in getting outside as soon as you can in the morning. I think nature and the sun does so much for you. But I have a lot of thoughts while I'm walking. And I'd say this is something I can share too. It is, shoot, I just totally forgot what I was going to say, Chelsea. It was about like, it was just about, somebody's like, I'll be walking the dogs. And I think like, what am I doing? Like, how can I be doing this? I should be out there like working on my reality TV pitch or whatever. And then the next thought I have is I'm living my life.
And
you
catch it.
I catch it, but I've never done that, Chelsea. I've never done that. If I was going to walk the dogs, it was because the dogs need to be walked. Now I'm walking the dogs and I'm walking them in the forest reserve because it's beautiful and I'm enjoying it. And I'm in life at that moment. And I think that's the adaptation that I've started to make to everything. And obviously some days it's easier to do that than others, but I try to make everything a ritual. I love candles. So I always try to light candles when I'm working. So it's like finding the things you love and realizing don't wait to do them, use them, incorporate them for the perfect time. Like just start adding those little things. And suddenly I think you've literally created a beautiful daily life for yourself or whatever is important to you. For me, ritual and writing and nature and all that ambiance, like candles and good food, that's the stuff that lights me up. So that's the stuff I make sure is in my life every day.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It sounds like you've infused like mindfulness, presence, and intention into your day.
Big time intention. Presence, big time. I was never present. Never. I was 10 miles ahead in the future.
Yep.
Presence is huge. I mean, even just that story I shared of having the moment of like asking myself, what am I doing? Like, I don't have time to do this. And I was like, in my, like, it felt like it was like my angel. It wasn't even me saying it. It was like, you're living. And I was like, I'm living. You're right. Like, this is it. This is what living is.
Yeah. It brings you back to being in France. It's like, this is what you said you would do. You're living. Like I'm
living. Yeah. Yep. I mean, it took me a little bit, but we're doing it.
Yes. And that's a journey itself too.
It is. And so like, this might be a good way to kind of wrap up Chelsea, I will say. So Chelsea and I were kind of chatting. We connected because she was on my podcast. This was after Labor of Love. I really was something I wanted to do and felt really scared about, I guess, for lack of better words. I'm not good with tech. I'm not, I didn't know how I was going to do it. And I did it. It's like the best thing that I've done because I've connected with so many wonderful people. So I continued on with the podcast. The pod is kind of on hold because I've now shifted back into reality TV, which I said I would never do. But I'm not going to be on the TV other than as the host, because again, with podcasting, I realized what I really love is being the host, kind of pulling out people's stories and connecting with people and doing that in a really authentic way. And I think I have some gifts there. And so it's like, okay, I never wanted to be on the show. I wanted to be hosting a show, but it has to be something that I believe in. This goes back into me actually being successful in sales. I would have told you in a million years, I would never do sales. I'm not a salesperson. And I was one of the most successful salespeople in my industry. It's because I was doing something I believed in. Yes. I was really passionate about holistic health and helping people feel better because I had gone through it myself. And those are the tools that I use to have some semblance of a normal life, right? And so it came from a very genuine place. And I think when someone's genuinely passionate about something and knowledgeable about it,
huge difference.
Big things happen, right? And so I've kind of made that shift with reality TV. I'm currently working with someone on her show. She asked me to host. I'm helping cast, which is a really interesting experience, and produce the show. And she's in her early 40s as well. So our whole sort of genre is really about empowerment and empowerment of women in a certain age that have up to this point really been shut out of the media. Mm-hmm. And this goes back to what we were saying, Chelsea, about like it or not, Hollywood, TV, streaming, this is where the power is. And so we're after Labor of Love, I really wanted to shut that door and be like, I don't want any part of that. Mm-hmm. I'm not a superficial person. I realized I was actually given a gift because I got to see behind the Iron Curtain, right? I got to understand how a show is made. I got to experience what it's like to be on a show and what I don't like about that and what I think could be different. And so now I'm like, oh my goodness, thank goodness that happened, because I'm taking all of that and trying to create reality TV that is both entertaining and empowering. And I don't even want to say try, because I absolutely know 100% it's possible. So I'm working on this show. And then I wrote my own show. People might not realize when you do reality TV, you still have to write the show, the whole concept and episodes. It has to be written.
Interesting.
Yes. You still, obviously you don't know what's going to happen, but you have to write the concept of each episode. And I've started meeting with executive producers and getting feedback. And I love this show so much. It's going to have 3 female leads in their 40s. I want the men to be empowered as well. So this is equal empowerment. I want everyone to feel good about it. I truly believe you can cast amazing people and still have a show that's entertaining, but also valuable for people. So basically, Chelsea, I'm starting a movement.
I love it.
Small goals, right?
I love it.
This sort of just came together. It's like we were talking about. It was like little thing here, little thing here, little thing here. And this past year has been so tough for me. And all of a sudden, I feel like things are coming together. I got asked to host this show. I finished writing my show. I've gotten some good traction with it. It's just like I see stuff starting to connect. And what's so cool about that, it's not necessarily anything new. And that's kind of what we've been talking about too. It's just that you're taking experiences you've had, you're choosing experiences you've had to bring into the present, and then adding like who you are now to that, like using those things in a way that makes sense for you now. And that's what I love about being this age. My like famous example I like to use that I think is really telling. I think it's very intimidating for people to start over at any point, but particularly like probably late 30s on, because they just feel like it's too late. It is not too late. It is not too late. It is not too late. And I think the best way to say that is when we get overwhelmed by starting over, I think is because we're picturing ourselves at the bottom of the mountain. But when you're this age and you have a lot of experience, life experience, whatever experience, you're actually at the top of the mountain. You're not at the bottom of the mountain. You're at the top of the mountain. You have to just be willing to take the leap to fly and trust that you can. You have everything you need. You have all the tools. You just have to remember that you know how to use them and trust yourself to take what you need and that you're going to be okay as you move forward. It's not an uphill climb, you know, really it's a leap. That's how I look at it. You don't have to learn anything new. You just have to leap.
I absolutely love that. And you're right. Like the experiences that you had now become tools. And like you have information now to like help lead and guide you in this next leap of a journey that you're taking.
Yes.
I am so excited for you. I am so excited for what this means for, again, like the doors that are opening for the women that, you know, are 40 and they're like, oh, I am also represented in this world. Like I can see myself.
I mean, and for me, it's really about girls too. It's about the next generation of women because this is what we're talking about making more options known.
Yep.
It's my mission is to empower women and empower girls because that's the next generation. So what I would love is girls to grow up just seeing all of this as norm. Like that's what, and I just said this to a friend the other day, Chelsea, and it gives me chills, but because I was starting to get traction on my show and I was like, this is crazy to say, but this is my life's work. I can't believe that it came down to reality TV. I'm the most atypical reality TV girl. And here I am, but that's because I'm creating new reality TV. I said, this is my life's work. And it's just really humbling to think that I'm actually making it happen. But, you know, I say it's my life's work because it's not like, oh, reality TV is my life's work. But I really had that reckoning that this is a medium that has clout, that has reach, and that can really change things socially. And doggone it, if I could leave this earth and realize like next generations of girls and women coming up, that this is all normal for them.
Right.
I have done more than I could have asked for in my life. So that's why I'm going all in, because to me, this is the best way that I personally can contribute based on the experiences that I've had and have the most impact and reach.
Oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, like mic drop, that's it. Beautiful. We've done it, completed. No, but right. That is the mission. It's that the work we're doing on ourselves to end the generations and to end the socialization, like we feel the impact and we're like, oh, phew. But then it's looking at, again, all those generations to come and being like, well, they don't have to repeat this, or they don't have to wait until they're 45 to feel like, oh, I finally now know what it means to like live an authentic life. And
that's right.
So I am so profoundly grateful to you as a mother of a little girl. I especially say thank you. And I'll be like, okay, let's go watch reality TV.
Yeah, this is reality TV. You don't have to be scared to let your children watch, right?
We need more of that, please. Yeah.
We do. I know we do.
Less of the filters. Yeah.
Yes. No, I'm so excited. So yeah, you'll be the first to know, Chelsea, when we'll do another episode when I can talk.
Let's do it. Deal. Okay. So can you quickly tell us where, I'm sure that people are like, oh, I have so many things I want to follow up on, or I want to learn more, follow her journey. Where can they find you?
Yeah, super easy because I pretty much do everything through Instagram. So if you want to know what I'm doing, just follow me on Instagram at Kristy Katzmann. And I do have a website, KristyKatzmann.com.
I'll link it all. Perfect.
Easy, guys.
And are you doing something with TikTok?
Oh, yeah. So, you know, probably by the time this airs, Chelsea, I'll have my TikTok live. I'm making my first videos today. Very scary. Very scary. But this goes to wanting to get the reach, right? And this is pushing myself to do things I'm not comfortable with or don't like to do because there's a better impact on the other side. So yeah, soon enough, you'll find me on TikTok. Same thing, Kristy Katzmann. Everything I do is under my full name. So when in doubt, search there.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I'm so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Bye.
Bye.